The late afternoon light came through the studio windows in long, clean streaks, catching the dust motes floating above the sample albums on the display shelf. I had just finished arranging the last lookbook when I heard the front door chime. I didn't look up right away. I assumed it was my 3 o'clock, a newly engaged couple from Westfield, who had found me through a referral. I smoothed the edge of the album cover, took a breath, and turned around. It was not my 3 o'clock. My mother was standing inside the door of my studio. My father was a step behind her, filling the frame, and behind him, my brother. 5 years, 2 months, and 11 days since the last time any of them had spoken to me. I know the exact count, because the day they stopped was the day I started keeping track of everything. Every call they didn't make, every birthday that passed in silence, every holiday I spent alone in my apartment, eating takeout and telling myself it was fine, that I was fine, that people who build things from nothing learn to be fine. I stood very still. My mother looked around the studio the way people look at something they expected to be smaller. The framed prints on the wall, the soft lighting over the client seating area, the glass cabinet with my award plaques. She looked at all of it and said nothing. My father was already moving toward the center of the room like he'd been invited. Like the 4 feet between us was just geography. "Mia," he said. Like we had spoken last week. I did not say anything back. My brother stayed near the door. He was looking at the floor, which told me everything I needed to know about how this conversation was going to go. When my brother can't meet your eyes, it means he already knows he's asking for something he doesn't deserve. My father set a manila envelope on the client table. He didn't slide it. He placed it flat with both hands, the way someone places something they want you to feel the weight of. "We need to talk," he said. I looked at the envelope. I looked at my father. I said, very quietly, "You have 5 minutes." He didn't flinch. He never flinches. That was always the thing about my father. He has a way of standing in a room that makes every room feel like it belongs to him. Even rooms that are yours. Even rooms you spent 3 years building into something real. He pulled out the chair across from me and sat down without being asked. And my mother sat beside him. And my brother finally crossed the room and stood behind them like a shadow. My father opened the envelope. Inside was a packet of papers. He spread them across the table and pushed them toward me. I didn't touch them. "Your brother's creditors have been asking about the cosigner on the 2020 equipment loan," he said. $43,000. "The default is now on record." I kept my face very still. "We know you've been made aware of this," my mother said. Her voice was softer than my father's, but her words never were. "The letter went to your address. They were talking about a loan I had never signed. A loan taken out in my name without my knowledge, using a signature that was not mine on a document I had never seen, for a catering equipment package for my brother's failed restaurant venture that collapsed in less than 18 months. I had found out about it 2 years earlier, in the middle of a routine credit check, when I was trying to secure a lease on this studio. I had sat in the parking lot of the lender's office for 45 minutes before I could drive home. I said nothing. "The creditors are going to come after you directly," my father continued. "They will take you to civil court. That will affect your business license, your lease, your ability to take on commercial contracts." He paused. He folded his hands on the table. "Unless we handle this as a family." There it was. "Handle it how?" I said. "Your brother needs support right now. He's trying to restructure. If you bring him in as a partner here, even a silent one, the revenue split would give him enough to negotiate with the creditors directly. They'd pull the default. It comes off your record." I looked at my brother. He was still not looking at me. 20%, my father said. "That's all. 20% of your bookings, paid quarterly, until the debt is cleared." My mother reached across the table and placed her hand near mine. "Not on it. Near it. We're your family, Mia. This is how families take care of each other." I thought about the last time they had said that to me. 5 years ago. November. My brother had come to me with the original idea. The restaurant concept. The whole pitch. He needed someone to co-sign the initial funding because his credit was already compromised from a previous venture. He needed my name on the paperwork. My father had sat across from me at that same kind of table, in their house, and said the exact same words. "This is how families take care of each other." I had said no. I had said no because I had spent 2 years at that point working as a second shooter for 3 different photographers, putting every dollar I didn't spend on rent directly into a savings account for my own studio. I had said no because I had run the numbers on my brother's concept and they did not work. I had said no because I had already co-signed one thing for my brother 4 years before that, a car loan, and he had defaulted on it within 8 months, and I had spent a year and a half repairing my credit. I said no because I was not going to let someone else's choices determine the shape of my life anymore. My father had looked at me across the table and said I was selfish. My mother had said I was cold. My brother had said nothing, which was somehow the worst of the 3. 2 weeks later, they stopped calling. I sent texts for the first 3 months. Holidays, birthdays, ordinary Tuesdays when I missed them enough to try. Nothing came back. I left a voicemail on my mother's phone on her birthday in the spring. She didn't return it. My brother blocked me on every platform. My father, When I finally drove to their house after 7 months, came to the door, and told me calmly that until I was ready to be part of the family, I should not come back. I drove home. I went to work the next morning. I kept building. Now my father was sitting in my studio telling me that the loan they had taken out in my name, without my knowledge or consent, was my responsibility to resolve, that I should hand over 20% of the business I had built alone, in silence, for 5 years, to fix a problem they had created. That this was family. I looked at the papers on the table. I said, I need a few minutes. My father nodded, like he had expected this, like he was being generous by giving it to me. I stood up, smoothed the front of my jacket, and walked to the back room. I want to tell you what the back room looked like in that moment because I think about it still. It's a small space, just a prep area with a workstation and a mini fridge, and a coat rack where I keep my camera bags. There is a window that looks out onto the alley behind the building. I stood at that window and I looked at the brick wall across from it and I breathed slowly for about 30 seconds, and then I picked up my phone. Not to call anyone. I had already made the calls that mattered. 2 weeks earlier, when a contact at the lender's office had quietly mentioned that my brother's creditors were asking questions. I had known something was coming. I had been careful. I had been very, very careful. I opened my messages and sent one text to the number I had saved in my phone under a name that was just a set of initials. The message was 4 words. They're here. Come now. Then I went back out front. My father looked up when I came back in. My mother was looking at her hands. My brother had finally moved to sit in one of the chairs along the wall, the ones meant for clients waiting, and he was bent forward with his elbows on his knees like a man who has been carrying something too heavy for too long. I felt something twist in my chest when I saw him like that. Something that was not sympathy exactly, but was not nothing either. I had loved my brother once with the specific and uncomplicated love you have for someone you grew up sharing a home with. That love does not disappear. It just changes shape into something you have to keep at a distance. I sat back down across from my father. I have a question, I said. He opened his hands. Go ahead. The 2020 loan. The equipment purchase for the restaurant. I kept my voice level. Did you know about it before or after you stopped speaking to me? Something moved behind my father's eyes, just briefly. That's not relevant to. I'd like to know, I said. My mother shifted in her seat. We did what we had to do, my father said. Your brother needed support. You had made your position clear. We found another way. Another way. They had found another way by forging my signature on a federal loan document, by using my name, my credit history, my identity as collateral for something I had already explicitly refused to participate in. And then they had cut me off and waited, apparently, for the consequences to arrive at my door. I see, I said. My father tapped the papers. So we're in agreement? No, I said. We're not. He looked at me. My mother looked at me. My brother, from across the room, finally raised his eyes. I'm not signing anything, I said. I'm not entering any partnership. I'm not paying any portion of that loan. My father's jaw tightened. Mia, the creditors, are already aware of the situation, I said, in full. A pause. I had first contacted an attorney 14 months ago. Her name was Dana Reyes and she specialized in credit fraud and civil identity theft cases. I had brought her everything, the loan documents, the signature comparison, the timeline, the records of my estrangement from my family that predated the loan by several months. She had been thorough and she had been honest with me about how long it would take and how uncomfortable it was going to get. I had said I understood. Over the following year, Dana had filed a formal dispute with the lender on my behalf, documenting the fraudulent signature with the help of a forensic document examiner. She had submitted a detailed affidavit of identity theft to the 3 major credit bureaus. She had sent certified letters to my parents and my brother informing them that the debt was being formally contested and that any further attempt to hold me liable for it would be pursued as a civil matter. She had done all of this quietly and without drama because that was how I had asked her to do it. 3 weeks ago, the lender had completed their internal review. The loan had been formally removed from my credit file. The debt had been reclassified. My brother was now the sole liable party, as he had always been. 2 weeks ago, Dana had filed a civil complaint against my parents and my brother for fraudulent misrepresentation, identity theft, and credit damage. The complaint was pending. My parents had been served. They knew all of this. The certified letters had gone to their address. They had received them, which meant that this visit, this envelope, this conversation, none of it was confusion. It was a last attempt. They had come here, knowing the legal situation. They had come anyway, hoping that a face-to-face confrontation, the weight of family, the performance of crisis, would make me fold. The loan is no longer attached to my name, I said. It hasn't been for 3 weeks. Your attorney should have told you that when they received Dana Reyes' correspondence. The room was very quiet. My father's hands, still flat on the table, pressed down slightly. You hired a lawyer. 14 months ago, I said. When I first found the fraudulent filing. Fraudulent, my mother said, and her voice was different now. Thinner. That's the legal term for using someone's signature without their knowledge or consent, I said. Yes. My brother made a sound that was not quite a word. I looked at him. His face had gone the color of old paper. You came here today to pressure me into assuming responsibility for a debt that was created through fraud, I said. I was not raising my voice. I had promised myself months ago that when this moment came, and I had known it was coming, I had known since the first certified letter went out, I would not raise my voice. Not because I wasn't angry. I was. I had been angry for a long time, a slow and patient kind of angry that had nowhere to go but inward until it finally had somewhere to go outward. But I wanted to be clear. I wanted every word to be something that could be repeated exactly later if it needed to be. That's extortion. You should know that. My father stood up. Don't do this, he said. His voice was very controlled. Don't make this into something it isn't. We are your family. You stopped being my family 5 years ago, I said. At your instruction. Not mine. The front door opened. Dana came in first, in her gray blazer, her briefcase at her side. Behind her was her paralegal, a quiet young man named James, who I had met twice before. And behind them, holding the door, were 2 officers from the county sheriff's office. My father turned. I had called the non-emergency line 40 minutes before my family arrived. I had told them there was a possibility of an extortion attempt at my business address related to an active civil complaint, and I had given them the case number. They had sent someone as a precaution. I was grateful for precautions. Mr. and Mrs. Calloway, Dana said. Her voice was pleasant. She had the particular pleasantness of someone who has been doing this for a long time and enjoys it. I'm glad you came in today. It actually saves us a step. My father looked at me. Just at me. Not at Dana. Not at the officers. Not at the papers on the table. At me. I met his eyes. I want to tell you what I felt in that moment, because people always want to know. They want to hear that it felt good. That 5 years of silence and loneliness, and building something real out of nothing, and 2 years of legal preparation, and a lifetime of being told that my value to this family was what I could give it, that watching it all collapse into accountability felt like victory. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like grief. The particular grief of confirming something you had hoped, somewhere very small and very quiet inside yourself, was not true. The grief of certainty. But underneath that grief, further down, there was something else. Something that had been building for a long time and that I had not had a word for until the comment I read once on a video I watched late one night, alone in my apartment, when I was deep in the middle of all of it. Someone in the comments had written, "This isn't revenge, it's accountability." I had read that sentence and felt something in my chest unclench. That was what it felt like. Not victory. Accountability. Dana placed a document on the table beside my father's envelope. This is a formal notice related to the civil complaint filed in district court. You've been made aware of the pending case. Today's visit to my client's place of business, given the context and the demands made, has been documented and will be added to the record. One of the officers stepped forward. He was calm and professional, and he explained to my father, briefly and without drama, that they were welcome to leave voluntarily, or the conversation could continue at a different location. He said it the way people say things when they have said them many times before, and don't need to add anything to them. My brother stood up from the chair along the wall. His voice, when he finally spoke, was hoarse. Mia. Just my name. Nothing after it. I looked at him for a long moment. You needed help 5 years ago, I said. I would have helped you find it. Not the way you asked, but there were other ways. I would have helped you look for them. I paused. You didn't give me the chance to try. He looked like he was going to say something else. He didn't. My mother gathered her coat from the back of the chair. She did not look at me again. My father picked up the manila envelope from the table, and I watched him fold it and put it inside his jacket, and I thought about how many years I had spent wanting him to look at me the way he looked at things that belonged to him. Like they had value. Like losing them would mean something. They left. The door chimed behind them. One of the officers took down a brief statement from me, and from Dana. James photographed the papers my father had left on the table before I could touch them. The whole thing took less than 20 minutes. When everyone was gone, Dana sat down across from me, and put her briefcase on the floor and said, "How are you doing?" I thought about it honestly. "I'm okay," I said. And I was. Not the way I had told myself I was. All those years, when I was sitting alone on holidays and telling myself it was fine. Actually okay. The particular okayness of someone who has done a hard thing correctly, and is standing on the other side of it. Dana told me the civil case would take several more months to work through. She told me to expect contact from their attorney within the week. She went over the next steps in her careful, organized way that I had come to rely on. And I listened, and I took notes. And when she left, I locked the front door and turned the sign to closed and sat down in the client chair my brother had been sitting in. I looked at my studio. The prints on the walls were from weddings I had shot over the past 4 years. Couples I had spent a full day with, watching them promise things to each other that they meant. The award plaques were from industry associations I had submitted work to on Longshot. The light fixtures were ones I had chosen carefully over 2 weekends of going to lighting supply stores alone, which I had thought was sad at the time, but which I now thought of as simply mine. Everything in this room was mine. Not inherited, not borrowed, not contingent on someone else's approval or presence. Mine. I thought about my 3 o'clock. They had texted to reschedule, which was fine. I thought about the wedding I was shooting on Saturday, a small outdoor ceremony with a guest list under 60 people, which was the kind of wedding I loved most. I thought about the lease I had secured on this space, and the 2 photographers I had recently brought on as contractors and the studio expansion I was saving toward, slowly and deliberately. The way I did everything, I had spent a long time thinking that the silence my family left behind was a wound I was supposed to heal around. I had tried to. I had done the therapy, and the journaling, and the long, honest conversations with friends who loved me, and the late nights when I cried in a way that felt like it had no bottom. And all of that was real, and all of it was necessary. But I had also spent those 5 years building something. And somewhere in the building, somewhere between the 2nd year and the 3rd, I had started to understand that the silence was not just a wound, it was also space. Space I had not had before. Space that had been occupied by obligation and expectation, and the constant low-level work of managing other people's feelings about who I was, and what I owed them. The silence was painful, and the silence was also, quietly, a gift I had not asked for. I did not forgive them. I want to be honest about that. Forgiveness is something I have thought about carefully, and I think it is a real thing that some people arrive at, and I have not arrived at it yet, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. What I had, instead of forgiveness, was clarity. I was clear about what had happened. I was clear about what I had done and what had been done to me. I was clear about the difference between those two things in a way I had not always been. I picked up my phone. I had a text from my friend Gwen, who had known about today, and had been waiting. It said, "How did it go?" I typed back. It went. And then, after a moment, "I'm okay. Actually okay." She sent back a string of things that made me laugh out loud in the empty studio, alone, with the late afternoon light still coming through the windows. And I sat there for a minute and let myself feel it. The laugh, the light, the okayness. Then I got up, unlocked the door, turned the sign back, and went to check my email for tomorrow's schedule. There was a message from a bride I had photographed 8 months earlier. She had attached a photo of a print she had made from one of the images from her wedding day. A candid shot of her and her new husband laughing at something just outside the frame, blurry-edged and warm. She had hung it in their living room. She wanted me to know. I looked at that photo for a long time. This is what I had built. This is what 5 years of silence and grief and careful, deliberate work had become. Not revenge, not victory, not anything so dramatic or so clean. Just a life that was mine, built from my own hands, standing on ground that no one could pull out from under me because I had laid every stone of it myself. I wrote her back. I told her the photo was beautiful. I told her it made my day. I meant it. That evening I drove home the long way, down the street that runs along the park, the one with the old oak trees that are just starting to come back this time of year. I had a voicemail from Dana confirming the documentation was filed. I had a voicemail from Gwen, asking if I wanted to get dinner. I had a voicemail from a new inquiry, a couple looking for an engagement shoot in the spring. I listened to all 3 with the window down and the air coming in cool and sharp. And I thought about my brother sitting in the chair along the wall with his elbows on his knees. I thought about my mother not looking at me when she left. I thought about my father's hands on the table. I thought, I hope they find a way through this. I genuinely do. Not for my sake. Not because it changes anything between us, or smooths over what was done. But because carrying that kind of behavior forward, through a life, costs something that I don't think any of them have fully priced yet. I know what it costs to be the one on the receiving end of it. I don't know what it costs to be the one doing it, but I suspect it is not nothing. I hope they find a way through, but I am done paying the fare. I pulled into my parking spot, sat for a second in the quiet of the car, and then went inside. I made tea. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and my planning notebook, and I started sketching out the expansion proposal I had been putting together for months, the one for the larger studio space 2 blocks over that had just come available. It was a good space, big windows, good light. I thought it would do just fine.